Wait, has Kirk Frost's worst secret been revealed on camera by Karlie Red? And was Rasheeda indeed sobbing and leaving the set as a result? If you thought the 13th season of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta was chaotic, chilly, get ready for an unexpected explosion. Currently, rumors have always followed Rasheeda and Kirk. You name it, secret children, cheating scandals, etc. However, nobody anticipated this. Karlie stunned everyone by dropping a bombshell that left the entire cast stunned at a sit-down that was meant to be about healing and moving on. Producers, we're talking jaws on the floor. Rasheeda couldn't stand the chaos. The moving cameras, with tears in her eyes, she stood up and left, leaving Kirk speechless and bewildered. Online rumors about what actually transpired behind the scenes have fans going crazy. Was it a setup? Is this just another development in the continuing drama surrounding the Frost family, or did Karlie finally have enough? Nothing will ever be the same again, that much is certain. Get some food because what you're going to hear could completely alter your perception of this couple. No one could have anticipated the whirlwind that Karlie Red would unleash at Rasheeda and Kirk's anniversary celebration, even though she had always been a storm in stilettos. What began as a night of glamour became a battleground of lies, tears, and truths. The drama was simmering beneath the surface, waiting for a spark. While the cameras were rolling and the cocktails were flowing, it all started when Karlie arrived stylishly late and turned heads with her blood-red dress. She didn't grin. She did not wave. She simply looked around the crowd before focusing on Kirk. The tension began to crackle at that point. Rasheeda also saw it. For a moment, her smile wavered. Though slight, it was present. Karlie seemed to float around the party like a relic from the past, mingling with guests and staying close to Kirk the entire time. Rasheeda made an effort to remain calm, dismissing it as a pointless rehashing of old drama. But she sensed it in her gut. There was a problem. Just as Kirk was raising his glass to toast, everything changed. Rasheeda, his voice faltered, not with feeling, but with something more substantial, anxiety. The room grew silent as Karlie interrupted him before he could finish, saying sharply, "You going to toast to your wife with that dirty conscience, Kirk?" Kirk stopped, perplexed. Rasheeda blinked, uncertain if this was a cruel prank or a genuine moment captured on tape. The visitors looked about. Karlie continued. As if she owned the floor, she strode to the front. "Do you believe you can play this game indefinitely? We both know the skeletons you've been hiding, so act like the devoted spouse you are." Her voice was calm but dragged across sandpaper with a match-like spark. Kirk murmured, "Karlie, this isn't the time," but she wasn't having it. It's always the time when women like Rasheeda are being lied to. Rasheeda was furious, remained motionless, torn between incredulity and a sudden insight. Her gaze scanned Kirk's face for answers, but he appeared to be a guy living in the moment as his history caught up with him. Then the shocking news arrived. Karlie looked directly at Kirk and said, "You remember Charlene?" "You certainly do, because of your brief business trip 2 years ago." "Yeah, you weren't in Atlanta. You were with her in Vegas. I can prove it." The audience let out a loud gasp. Already, phones were being used to record. It was more than simply a drama. It was explosive. "Charlene, what is she talking about?" Rasheeda muttered. Kirk attempted to reply, but his words fell flat. His forehead started to perspire. After years of sidestepping scandals, the man was suddenly trapped, exposed, and totally helpless. Karlie took her phone out. In the lobby of Caesar's Palace, Kirk and Charlene are seen holding hands in this picture. This isn't Photoshop, baby, and it's time-stamped and date-stamped. Rasheeda's breath caught in her throat as she gazed at the TV. More loud than any dispute, the stillness between her and Kirk roared. She blinked the tears from her eyes as they rose. She refused to let them go. "Not just yet," Karlie said. "And keep this in mind before you accuse me of lying. Charlene and I had been friends before she discovered Kirk's true nature. She filled me in on everything." At last, Kirk was able to speak. This is not new information. It had no significance. But the worst he could have said was that. Rasheeda yelled, "It's true, it's old news." He paused. "I didn't say that. You just did." Rasheeda's voice cracked as she shot back. Karlie gave a headshake. "You have been gaslighted by him for years." I made an effort to remain silent. "Yes, I did. However, observing you stand by it made me sick to see you smiling as though everything was fine." There were two camps in the room, those who murmured suspicions about the depth of Kirk's deception and those who observed in stunned silence. Then, without warning, Mimi entered. No one invited her. Nobody anticipated her. However, she was there with her arms folded and her lips squeezed tightly together. When Mimi stated, "Karlie's not lying," dazed, Rasheeda turned to face her. "What? I also saw Kirk in Las Vegas. With someone, not Charlene. I thought it was business, but now I'm not so sure." Kirk appeared to have been struck by a train. Other, blonde hair, tattoos. The whisper, "You were supposed to be at a conference," came from Rasheeda. Kirk scratched his face under the burden of all his secrets. "You told me it was for work." Reaching him. "I didn't intend to cause you harm. However, you did," she said. Moving away from him, Karlie's gaze softened somewhat. "Rasheeda, you deserve better. Better has always been due to you." Rasheeda's eyes eventually filled with tears. The years spent protecting Kirk of everything came crashing down at once. Even though she told herself she was dreaming things and dismissed the rumors, she looked around at the visitors. "Give me a minute." Kirk, however, attempted to take her hand before she could leave. "Please." She pulled back her arm. "Don't." The cameras continued to record. All eyes remained fixed. It was more than simply a drama. It was a reckoning. The worst part, too. This was just the start. When the cameras were rolling on a calm afternoon, it all began with what was intended to be a straightforward catch-up between Spice and Karlie. It was informal. The air was full of laughter. However, Karlie's energy seemed altered in some way. She continued to fidget, looking around as though she was considering her next move. Spice saw it right away. Her voice was low as she leaned forward. "What are you thinking about, girl?" Then the floodgates suddenly opened. At first, Karlie's voice shook, but once she spoke, it seemed as though she couldn't stop. She said, nervously fiddling with the hem of her blouse, "I wasn't going to say anything. But I'm at my breaking point. Kirk has been keeping something from us. Something really gloomy." Spick's hand automatically went to her lips as her eyes grew wild. "What are you discussing? What sort of thing?" Karlie's eyes were fixed on the camera. "He has spent years deceiving Rasheeda. Furthermore, cheating isn't the only issue. It's more profound. Family matters are involved." The room's atmosphere abruptly shifted. It sounded nearly like a pin dropping. Spice was taken aback when she muttered, "You're not saying what I think you're saying." Kirk has a whole other situation that Rasheeda is unaware of," Karlie said, her voice brimming with passion. Behind the scenes, the news spread like wildfire. The team began to whisper. The assistants stood still. Mimi, who was filming her own in another room, received word. Section. Her eyes blazed as she rushed in. "What's happening? Now, someone had best tell me." Karlie paused, but Spice gave her the rundown. Mimi did not even bat an eye. "I was aware that something was wrong with him. Rasheeda should be informed." Her eyes remained calm, but her voice cracked as she spoke. "I couldn't continue to act as though it wasn't killing me." Kirk, meanwhile, could not be reached. Immediately, his phone went to voicemail. He never showed up for a scheduled shot, despite production's best efforts to bring him on site. It was said that he had disappeared. Something wholly uncharacteristic of him. Nobody was prepared when Rasheeda eventually entered. Although her face was unreadable calm, even her eyes appeared worn out, as if she hadn't had any sleep in days. The room went cold. Spice approached her and took her hand tenderly. She said, "You need to hear something." Instead, with the cameras still rolling, they sat Rasheeda down. Karlie, who was now clearly upset, reiterated all of her previous remarks. There was a lengthy moment after Karlie finished, but Rasheeda remained silent and listened. Even when her voice broke halfway through, "I knew something wasn't right," Rasheeda muttered. "I sensed it." Her voice broke, and she covered her mouth, attempting to contain her emotions. "He always had a reason, always left, always evading, but I never thought this would happen." Then she broke, her face buried in her hands, and the room fell silent. Spice put her arms around her and firmly said, "You don't deserve this," adding, "No woman does, Sierra." For a little moment, even the cameras panned away to give her space. Despite her prior reservations, he approached and joined the hug, saying, I've got you." She continued steadily, "So you're not alone in whatever comes next." "I apologize," Karlie said in a whisper as she stood aside and wiped away her own tears. "I didn't intend for it to come out this way." Rasheeda raised her head and spoke, her mascara smudged. "You fulfilled your obligations. I appreciate you preventing me from continuing to live a lie." Suddenly, everything changed. What had started out as a lighthearted day of filming had become a full-fledged emotional confrontation, and the women stood together not only in friendship but also in truth. Kirk and Rasheeda's marriage had been shattered by the truth, but it had also created an unexpected bond between the cast members. And just when they thought the drama had peaked, something else happened. Mimi received a text from someone claiming to know even more about Kirk's secret life, but she remained silent. Everyone observed her pale complexion and her phone in her hand as she simply gazed up at the others. "What is it?" Mimi's voice was almost audible above a whisper as Sierra questioned. "You won't believe this." Rasheeda heard their words and she wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Kirk stood silently in front of her like a man who had accepted his punishment. The more she remained silent, the more chaos was raging inside her. Words left Kirk's mouth, and her face lost color. The silence in the house felt like the hurricane's eye. Then, as Rasheeda composed herself, she said only one word. "Why? I thought I was protecting you," Kirk whispered softly. "I didn't want you to go through that darkness." Kirk gazed at her, but his eyes were blank. Bambi, who had already witnessed all the drama on social media, came at that same moment. Rasheeda laughed bitterly, saying, "You weren't protecting me. You were keeping me in the dark, and now that I've stepped into the light, everything is burning." She gave Rasheeda a firm embrace and remarked, "I'm here for you. You're strong." Kirk looked at Bambi and remarked, "You should have told her first." But there was also an odd strain on her face, as if she was concealing something. Bambi shook her head in silence, but the action alone conveyed a complete tale. According to Rasheeda, who gave them both a look, "So you both knew all along." Bambi, crying, stated, "I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid it would break you," as Kirk bowed his head in embarrassment. "The two of you decided what I could endure." After Rasheeda's voice raised in rage. "Am I that weak that the camera team had stopped filming, but the mics were still in place?" Kirk said softly, "I think about it every day, and every day I despise myself for it." The tension was heavy, like gasoline catching fire. For a moment, everything stopped. "What do you want now that it's all out?" Rasheeda inquired, meeting Kirk's gaze. Kirk remained silent and just took out an old picture of himself, Rasheeda, and a young kid. "I just want my family back," he muttered. However, going back wasn't that easy. Rasheeda. She continued to stare at the picture, her hands shaking, her heart on one side and a truth that had rocked her marriage on the other. Karlie entered the room, and everything became even more complicated. She had come back for a brief meeting. She pulled Bambi aside and whispered, "You knew this day would come, right?" But she knew something awful had happened the moment she walked in and observed the atmosphere. Bambi remarked quietly, "We kept this secret hidden, but hidden truths always come to light. And there's no going back now that it's out. You think Rasheeda's the only one who's hurt. I was part of this lie, too, for years. But whatever happens next, I'm not staying on the sidelines." Karlie's response was followed by another abrupt turn of events. Karlie pulled out a video on her phone, a recording of Kirk encounters an unknown individual from a more sinister period of his history. Karlie had been emailed this movie in an anonymous manner. Rasheeda reacted as though her entire world had suddenly fallen apart when she saw the video. "There's still more," she expressed. "I believed that everything was finished. But this is just the beginning." Bambi questioned, "Who sent that recording and why?" Karlie answered, "Perhaps someone else didn't want to be involved in keeping the truth from you, or perhaps someone else didn't like hiding the truth." Rasheeda continued to stare at the screen as if she were watching her entire past unfold frame by frame. When Kirk saw the video, he covered his face as though he was no longer allowed to show himself. Karlie then dropped yet another bomb. "There are other videos. 3 more clips have been sent to me. Each one is more explosive than the others and is connected to your connection." Bambi was clearly in a panic. Karlie nodded and said, "You mean, everything was recorded? It's all coming out now?" Rasheeda only stated one thing at that time: "I no longer have faith in anyone. Not me, not my friend, not my husband, and now not myself." And of all the cuts, that was the deepest. A lady who was losing faith in herself. And the air in the living room became frigid, just when everyone believed that things couldn't possibly get much worse. With his head slightly bent as though preparing for the next strike, Kirk sat still. Rasheeda's lips trembled due to the sheer volume rather than weakness of everything falling on her at once. "Karlie," continued. She addressed him directly and spoke loudly enough for all of the cameras, everyone in the room, and all of the fans behind their screens to hear. Inform them about the Southside flat. As you attempted to do with your other secret, tell Rasheeda about the small one you kept hidden. 1. Kirk's mouth tightened. Slowly, as though time had stopped, Rasheeda turned. There was a spooky silence in the room. Even the crew's and producers' background banter vanished into thin air. He remained silent. He did not refute it. And that said everything for Rasheeda. Karlie was talking about a completely furnished flat that Kirk had reportedly been renting for more than a year under a business alias. As the internet would eventually reveal. For what purpose? Who was able to access it? Nobody was aware yet. The timing, however, could not have been more detrimental. Already standing on shaky emotional footing, Rasheeda felt the floor completely vanish. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. Not right away. Rather, she stood motionless with vacant eyes. Seeing someone's soul depart from their body was like that. Rasheeda abruptly left the room after removing her microphone and giving it to the closest crew member. Not a glance back, not a word. Kirk and everyone else gazed in awe. However, he did not pursue her this time. Cameras outside captured her pacing. She was struggling to gather herself. However, Kirk remained still. You don't deserve her, but the least you can do is try to explain. Right now, she won't trust a word I say. Perhaps she shouldn't. The discussion took a different path at that point. Bambi, who had been silent up until this point, piped up from the corner of the room while the cameras were still rolling. What if I told you that there are other people who have receipts than Karlie? Everybody's heads turned. With her phone in hand, Bambi stood up and declared, I didn't want to speak. However, perhaps it's time for us all to stop shielding the wrong individuals at this point. As she scrolled through her gallery, she saw photos of bank records, texts, and even a grainy image of Kirk purportedly entering a building that had the same address as the one Karlie had stated. This right here. Holding up her phone, Bambi remarked. This is from last December. The same weekend he told Rasheeda he was in Miami for a business trip. He wasn't in Miami. The room erupted in gasps. Unsure whether to cut the cameras or let it play out, the producers exchanged glances. Back in the corridor, a producer came up to Rasheeda in private and tried to comfort her by handing her water. Gently, he said, Want to stop filming? Rasheeda shook her head and wiped her eyes. No, she said emphatically. I want to get this done. They must watch me take control of my story. She walked back into the room with a heavy but determined gait. Kirk looked up as she walked in, a look of sadness and remorse on his face. As though sensing this was her moment, everyone moved aside. With a steady yet low voice, she started. For what length of time? Kirk paused. A year, perhaps a bit longer. Were you in love with her? No, he answered right away. That wasn't the case. Did there exist more than one? Quiet. No cry could have drowned out that silence. Rasheeda nodded, her eyes starting to well up again but holding back. I trusted you with everything I had, including my youth. Then, in an unexpected change of events, she looked at Karlie. To everyone's surprise, she said, Thank you for informing me and preventing my blindness. Karlie glanced startled. I didn't mean to do you any harm. I understand, but sometimes the stillness that accompanies the truth hurts more. Rasheeda turned back to Kirk and asked one last inquiry. Why didn't you tell me directly? Why hold out for the drama and the cameras? He raised his head. Since I didn't believe you would ever go. Like a goods train, those words struck. Later, viewers would comment they didn't think Kirk would come clean like that. To be so direct and harsh in his candor, reactions erupted on social media. Hot hashtags in a matter of hours. Our Rasheeda was worthy of better. Our Karlie was correct. Our Kirk was revealed. Rasheeda departed once more as the episode came to a close. But not in tears this time. With her head raised high, she exuded strength and power, prepared to rebuild with or without Kirk. Within, the remainder of the cast sat dumbfounded. This season just changed everything, Spice said, leaning closer to Mimi, and it had. Amidst all of this, one lady reclaimed her story in the face of public betrayal. Friendships were put to the test, alliances were changed, and secrets were converted into weapons. For Kirk, however, the consequences were only getting started. Everything appears to be going out of control all of a sudden. Karlie's admission has caused more than just a reverberation. The entire house has been completely upended. Kirk's reputation is destroyed. Fans are constantly wondering what will happen to the Frost as Rasheeda's world continues to spiral out of control. Family, There is a lot of tension in the air, and everyone is wondering if Rasheeda will leave permanently. Will Kirk continue to play damage control behind the scenes, or will he come clean about everything? There is no doubt that trust has been betrayed, and things will never be the same. Their loved ones are taking sides. Even the show's creators were caught off guard by this shocking revelation, which has the internet in a frenzy. We can only speculate as to what kind of mayhem lies ahead if this is simply the beginning. We would like to hear from you now. Though, do you believe that Kirk's secret was even more significant than Karlie's disclosure? Is there more to this tale that hasn't been revealed yet? Most importantly, is this the last straw for Rasheeda, or should she give him another chance? Now leave your ideas in the comments. Don't hold back. Every single one is being read by us. Remember to use the like button if you were riveted to your screen by this tale. In order to avoid missing the next twist in this crazy story, be sure to subscribe. Hey, tell your friends about this, because they will want to see, we assure you, this mess also develops. This is just the start. Hold on tight, because in reality TV, the truth can be found in a humorous way. It's